Hi friends, well today I wanted to expand a little bit. I made a video last week about the Merlin Tarot. I had just received the deck in the mail, and I had also ordered under separate cover this book. So having received the book and kind of gone through it a little bit, I wanted to make another video where I sort of relayed the information to you, because this book is long out of print. While you can still receive this deck from rjstewart.net, the book is a different story. So let me first show you the book. A little bit of, I know there are several versions of this book. One is called the Merlin Tarot Handbook, and there is a third version of some sort. So it's been in print on and off since the 1980s. This particular version, 1988. All right, so this, if you have this deck, you really need this book, because the major arcana are completely renumbered, very different from Rider-Waite. And this book will explain it to you. So here we have the table of contents. We go through all the cards of the major arcana. There's a little bit of information on divination in general, farsight and insight, tarot pattern making, which we would call spreads, and then there's one little chapter at the end on the number and court cards, and then there's an extensive reference and index. So the reason that this deck is so different, the majors don't start with 0 and go through 21. We have 22 majors, and number 1 is the moon in this deck. So 2 is the sun, 3 is star, and so on. And there is a reason, which I didn't know when I made my other video the other day. The reason behind this is that R.J. Stewart has his own method based on ancient Celtic information on how he numbered the major arcana. And I think the easiest way to explain it, without looking at tables — there are a lot of tables in here, graphs. Here's another graph, looks sort of like the Kabbalah. And there are also a couple cards in this deck that are similar in nature, that sort of give you the diagrams. However, unless you really want to dive into reading by a whole new method, I can probably just give you the basics here of how the major arcana is renumbered based on this chart. So here's his basic table of trumps. 1, 2, 3 is moon, sun, and star. That represents the 3 worlds. And to give you a little more information about the 3 worlds, all transformative journeys and changes of consciousness occur. The 3 worlds are moon, sun, and star. Then after the 3 worlds, moon, sun, and star, we have the 3 wheels: fortune, justice, and judgment. And he describes the 3 wheels as thresholds of energy and consciousness. Then once you've had the 3 worlds and the 3 wheels, you have the what he calls ascending trumps, and this starts with the Fool. So here are the 3 worlds: moon, sun, and star. This represents the 3 worlds. Then we go to the 3 wheels: fortune, justice, and judgment. Then we have the ascending trumps. So we start with the Fool, then we go to the Magician, the Chariot, the Guardian, and I believe the Guardian is meant to represent Merlin himself, the Tower, Death, Hanged Man, and the Hermit. Then we begin what he calls the descending trumps. These are descending or externalizing. And the descending trumps are Innocent, which corresponds to Hierophant, Temperance, the Emperor, Strength, the Empress, Lovers, Priestess, and the Universe. So it's a little different, or it's a lot different. However, the cards are basically all the same cards that you have in Rider-Waite. They're just in a little bit of a different order. So I plan to make this video, if you want to stick with me a little longer, we'll go a little bit through each card of the major arcana. And I can tell you, because this book is really fascinating. Okay, it starts out with the image, a line drawing image of each card, and then a description of the attributes of the card, and the partner trumps, as he calls them, the spheres and planets, the attributes of the card, the god and goddess form, key phrases, which kind of is divinatory meanings, and information about the Merlin texts and how he came up with the vision for the card, and then the divinatory meanings. Then there's a lot of explanation about the origins of the image, the contents of the image. So in other words, the actual elements of each card and what they represent. So in other words, in this card, the Chariot, there is a heron. And he explains why that element is in the card. The Chariot and horses, the charioteer, or the goddess. And there's a lot of pagan iconography and pagan focus in this deck, which I really like. And then why landscape and city is pictured in the card. So the whole book is pretty much centered on the major arcana, and a lot of detailed information on each card of the majors. Then here is the tarot pattern making chapter. And this is just one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. About shuffling. He regards shuffling as dissolving. When we randomize a tarot pack, we are dissolving the universe. Conversely, when we lay out a pattern after randomizing the pack, we are creating the universe. When the pack lies dormant, it is the universe in potential. So tarot patterns, according to this author, are primarily magical rituals rather than attempts to isolate sets of meaningful symbols in any coincidental order of appearance. So then he goes into a little more explanation about dissolving, clearing, and shuffling. And I found interesting that he emphasized that shuffling should be done slowly and deliberately and not quickly. Let me read that section to you. The pack is then shuffled in the normal manner, but slowly and steadily. A steady pace, quite different from the fast shuffle of card games, allows the reader to stop easily at any given point in the shuffling sequence. Steady rhythmic shuffling is a physical reiteration of the turning of the wheel. For both the cosmology and psychology of tarot are based upon three wheels or spirals of consciousness. With practice and meditation upon tarot, a reader will know intuitively when to stop shuffling and lay out cards. So I kind of love that explanation, because when I'm shuffling, oftentimes I'll just get that sense that it's time to stop. This card wants to be drawn, and it makes a lot of sense. Here we have more explanation on some layouts, which he calls systems of divination, farsight and insight, unique to the Merlin Tarot. And these can be very complicated the way he's explaining them. So personally, I keep my spreads pretty simple because I don't have the time or the mental capacity to really learn complicated ideas or complicated spreads. Here's the creation of the world spread. Here is a little simpler spread. This is the ferryman. Okay, then we have, as I said earlier, just a few pages about the number and the court cards. So the number cards are considered element cards. And here's a very concise table. We've got birds or air, which is swords, serpents or fire, which is wands, fishes or water/love or emotion, and those are correlated to the cups, and beasts or pentacles, related to earth. And then there's just a very concise table here of all the cards in the minor arcana. And then when you look at the cards in the deck, each card has that keyword on it. For instance, here is the Seven of Serpents. And the Seven of Serpents is ability, and that's what it notes on this card. Then we have a little information about court cards. Court cards represent the elements within or through the human psyche. So in meditation, the Fool represents the innermost self. The court cards or people represent aspects of personality. The court cards show the cycle of a lifetime, from spring or beginning to winter and death. Thus, a fourfold life pattern, birth, adulthood, maturity, old age, corresponds to the court cards, as well as to the broader cycle of the 4 quarters, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And then here is a really cool diagram demonstrating that kind of aspect. So one thing I really enjoyed about this deck is the fact that, and I know some people don't like the fact that the minor arcana are just what they would consider pips. But with a pip deck like this, and you do get some keywords with your pips, and it gives your mind a little more freedom rather than having a story as with the Rider-Waite. So you've got a little more associative ability with your pip cards. And they have more it seems like when you have non-illustrated pips that you have more of they have the minor place that they really should have in a reading. They're not as important as the major arcana, and they look less important, although they are more to do with the mundane activities or something of lesser importance in your life. So that in this case, when you have cards that are this way, when you have a major card with the beautiful illustration, it's going to draw more attention and have more meaning, which is really the purpose of the major arcana cards. So I hope this sort of brought a little more value to this deck. If you have it or were thinking of getting it, I'll put a link again in the description box below for the Merlin Tarot. So we're going to add a little bit on about each card in the major arcana. So here we have the moon, obviously representing the lunar world. Divinatory meanings are unconscious forces or unseen influences. And then there's quite a lot in here about the implications of the image of the moon. From time constraints, we obviously can't read all of those. How it represents reflections from the moon pool in dreams, consciousness or unconsciousness. the contents of the image. I find this is really one of the most interesting parts of the book, because I love to learn about the contents of the image in the cards. So here is the pool, the watery vehicle and source of living creatures. The newt is the symbol of the crab, or is the equivalent of the crab found in standard packs. It represents life in two worlds, as an amphibian existing both on land and in water. An older name for the newt is the eft, which also means a fairy. Both earthy and watery, yet with clear hints of further dimensions and worlds. The newt represents life in the material world upon earth. He or she can, by a long tedious climb around the pool, reach the steps without ever entering the water. Such an approach takes a very long time. The steps. These are worn and ancient. Many beings have emerged from the primal pool over thousands of years, all seeking a path into the unknown. All living beings that are born or that die cross the upper 3 steps. Each step represents one of the 3 worlds, lunar, solar, or stellar. So the great goddess of primal religion and fundamental consciousness has 3 aspects: youth, maturity, and age. She is maiden, lover, and crone, or I learned maiden, mother, and crone, the triple goddess known to ancient culture. This is a very pagan or goddess-centered deck. The wolf and dog. We have now climbed the 3 steps and stand upon the beginning and ending of the path. We are immediately confronted by 2 creatures symbolizing the first of many polar interactions or relative sets of energy. Traditionally, these are the wolf and the dog, or hound. A perfectly balanced awareness passes freely to and fro between them. The dog is obedient energy, consciousness, while the wolf is wild and instinctive energy, consciousness. We must have a balance of both to function properly. The wolf tries to serve only himself, while the dog tries to serve a collective family, a purpose, or even a tribe or culture. Both are closely related. The dog was once a wolf. Either may change into the other through the turning of the Wheel of Fortune, which contains the lunar world around the axis of the spindle. Very interesting. Tower and tree. Moving further into the image, we find a transformed and reversed polar pair. The tower is beyond the wolf, while the tree is beyond the dog. There is a rhythm or mirroring of imagery in tarot, and our first examples are found within the trump of the moon. The tower represents consciousness in its assembled or disciplined and structured state, while the tree represents consciousness in its organic or natural state. Both reach from the earth to the stars. I just can't read everything. Mountains and forest. The path winds gently away, passing between the moonlit mountains and forest. This is our final horizon in the image. Beyond is the solar world. So there's a lot, moon and stars, a lot of information, especially on these first 3 cards. The moon contains the face of Luna, goddess of all tides, rhythms, and changes in life patterns. The moon includes and prefigures many of the essentials of the entire sequence of trumps, the 4 elements, in the form of expressed earth world and foundational lunar realm, the law of polarity and exchange, and the transcendent power of the stars, one of which is the sun, are all defined within the moon. Okay, then we move on to the sun. This is the solar world. The wheel it's associated with is justice. Divinatory meanings, a powerful harmonizing, centralizing influence or energy upon life patterns. Then we have the origins of the image, the content of the image, the path. We now enter upon a higher level or harmonic of the path first encountered within the image of the moon, the first trump to be experienced, on turning attention inwards in meditation. This second level is marked in most mystery systems or esoteric schools of training by a key symbol. In the Merlin Tarot, the key symbol is the ancient Z sign found carved upon standing stones, known as Pictish stones in Scotland, but with worldwide parallels and similarities. The Z sign may be seen as a lightning flash, the passage of power between earth and heaven. The horse or mare. Traditionally, the power and motion of solar and lunar energies is represented by a horse or mare. Male or female, the horse shows living energy and motion. The white mare connects to a Celtic goddess, sometimes known as Epona, from Romano-Celtic inscriptions, and to a vision of a white horse that features in the prophecies of Merlin. More precisely, the white mare represents solar energy, modified through a feminine lunar form or aspect. The child who rides the white mare is a divine child of light found in various religious and mystical traditions throughout the world. In Celtic legend, he is Mabon, son of Modron, son of Mother. His image shows spiritual innocence and divine perfection carried outwards by natural power and motion. The hill and cave. The path leads toward a hill or tor, with a cave mouth visible near its summit. We may ride with the child to this hill, following the increasingly spiral path upwards. Within the cave, an individual may be reborn into other dimensions, other worlds. Here is where we learn that the sun becomes a star, or where a mortal man or woman becomes a deity. There's just so much here. The landscape. The brightly lit summer landscape is a higher harmonic or daylight version of the other world, which we first entered through the moon. It is a variant of the Summerland of Celtic legend, and many powerful spiritual beings live in such realms. The hawk. As we found in our first trump, the moon, totem beasts play an important role in the Merlin Tarot. Upon moving into the solar world, the flying, soaring awareness is symbolized by the hawk reaching high into the light of the sun. The slow earth and water-bound newt is replaced by the fast, keen-sighted, darting hawk. The sun god. At the crown of the trump, we see the blazing sun. Within it is the face of the deity Belanos, Bel or Apollo. The name simply means light or beautiful. Our image is taken from a 1st century carving in the beautiful temple of Sulis Minerva at Aquae Sulis in Bath, England. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, this temple was founded by King Bladude, a legendary flying king who was founder of many arts and sciences in Britain. And there's a lot more written about the sun image there. So that's quite a bit of information on our second wheel. Our third wheel, the star. This is the stellar world. Represents crossing into solar. The wheel it's associated with is judgment, or the third wheel. And it represents universal, transhuman, and transcendent consciousness. The origin of the image. The star is an image of transcendent universal light. The contents of the image. The solar system, the abyss, the supernatural or universal world, the goddess Astrea, and 2 vessels and stars. So the solar system. Okay. The link between the physical sun and other stars as inhabitants of the stellar world may be understood through initiation into the mysteries. In the simplest sense, the stars within the cave represent a spiritual truth known through contemplation or vision and discovered briefly by all of us at the moment of physical death. The stellar world and the goddess. In our image, the stellar world is shown in the upper part above the abyss. Here we see stars being uttered or born in their own realm. Traditionally, the Pleiades are shown in some tarot cards, symbolizing an idealized septenary as a stellar archetype for 7 planets of the solar system in basic astrology. And the 2 vessels, I'll give you a little bit of information about that. The goddess, sometimes named Astrea, which simply means star, crosses the abyss. She gives energy to all worlds and dimensions. We see her as a transhuman form, at once beautiful and terrible. In tarot, her power is modified and harmonized into a vision of a beautiful maiden. Thus we see her image through the filter or interface of the solar and lunar worlds. The 2 vessels. In her right hand, the goddess holds a vessel which pours energy downward across the abyss. This vessel represents the source of creation, which develops as formation and expression, generating the solar system, the planets, and life forms of all sorts until it reaches the sublunar world of Earth, our consensual world and planet. In her left hand is an upright vessel from which originative energies radiate. This is the source of power that utters forth light and stars universally, the highest state or condition of existence. The two vessels are connected by a sweeping line, symbolizing the serpentine nature of universal energy. The originative and creative vessels and worlds are united by the goddess Estrella. If we could enter within her image, we would find the seed or heart of all being, where original divinity emerges from incomprehensible void. Traditionally, this unattainable point or seed is geometrically at the center of the image. If we locate this point, we see that all other proportions of the trump rotate around it. So I'm reading you quite a bit from this book because it's no longer available, and it may be difficult to find, and if you find it, it may be like upwards of $50 or $100. So I hope you don't mind. If you want to fast forward or skip through parts of these, you're free to do so. But for those that probably can't get the book, I'd like to give them some information. Alrighty, then we enter into our three wheels. The Wheel of Fortune. This is the first wheel. It's considered to be lunar into solar, or transferring between the lunar and solar worlds. The divinatory meaning is a change of fortune, maybe positive or negative. Often indicates in association with other cards how the individual reaction will affect a cycle of events. There's so much more here that of course we have very little time. The origins of the image. The Wheel of Fortune defines the boundary of relative energy consciousness around the earth. In this inclusive sense, it contains all life upon our planet, the planet itself, and the spheres of energy that extends into and interacts with the field of the solar system in which the planet orbits. The contents of the image. The spindle. Tarot tends to work in a triple spiral with a fourfold relative division or cycle of energies within each rotation. The Wheel of Fortune is the lowermost turning of a triple spiral defined by the images of wheel, justice, judgment. These three trumps are harmonics or levels of one universal concept, the threshold of polarity or relative states of being. So there's a lot in here about this polarity idea. We've got the directions: above, east, south, below, west, and north. The spindle is grasped by two dragons, one at either extreme. These dragons represent ultimate polarities of creation and destruction, positive and negative, outgoing and ingoing. They appear in various forms and roles throughout the Merlin Tarot. And then the fourfold cycle. In this trump, four small circles unite together within a fifth, greater circle. This is the structure of the universe as described by Taliesin the Bard to the prophet Merlin. Within the Wheel of Fortune, this pattern represents the planet Earth with its four seasons, four regions of east, south, west, and north, four oceans, four winds, and central zone leading into the other dimensions or worlds. So at the top we have east with the eagle, life, air, dawn, spring, birth, sword, birds. Number 2 at the right side of the card, we have this represents south, the area of light, fire, noon, summer, adulthood, rods, and serpents. At the bottom we have the fish, which represents west, love, water, sunset, autumn, maturity, cup, and fishes. And to the left of the card we have, in this card it's a wolf, but on the picture here they show a stag, but an animal of the earth, and that represents the north, law, earth, night, winter, age, shield, and beasts. So this is sort of a synopsis of the meanings in general of the four dimensions that we find within the tarot. Very, very cool. Actually, the card is different from the image in the book here. This is a better image than this. we have the fish at the bottom, but over here we've got a wolf as opposed to a stag. Over here is a horse rather than a snake, and above there's an eagle in the book, but yet we've got a stag. So I'm not sure why that was changed between here and this card. It makes a lot more sense to me as it's pictured here, and I wish this card would have been matched more closely to this. But that did help me to read this explanation. So then the book goes into more explanations about the seasons, the beasts. Each of the 4 seasons or phases of life has a totem beast. Okay, well, I'm not going to go any more into the Wheel of Fortune. We're going to move on now to Justice. I love this card. It's beautiful. So divinatory meaning is transpersonal energies of adjustment related to changes and interactions upon a spiritual level. May also relate to energies adjusting over long time cycles, similar to the Eastern concept of karma. Justice always indicates essential adjustments that lead toward balance. It may be as direct as a court case or important decision, or it may be more profound in terms of deep adjustment in the individual. The contents of the image, the 3 steps. The lowermost step bears the symbol of the goddess. The 2 trees. The lowermost step is pierced by the roots of 2 trees that act as pillars on either side of the image. They are a naturalistic form of the pillars of creation and destruction between which all entity resonates. Beyond the 3rd step, between the trees, is a gateway to unknown supernal consciousness, the stellar world beyond the abyss. The scales. The symbol of the scales or balance found in the astrological sign of Libra has been employed for centuries, possibly millennia, to represent a metaphysical condition of perfect equality. Okay, there's a lot more about the scales. I don't have time to read it. The owl is the bird of Athena or Minerva, or of more ancient goddesses of wisdom. It is also the totem of a dark and often frightening goddess of the underworld, who is the secret face of Athena. The owl flies by night and sees all. Nothing may be hidden from it, and in this sense it is the totem bird of justice. The goddess Justice. Justice is blind. She adjusts by pure energy and sees no difference between any individual, soul, condition, or entity that comes before her. Great or small, holy or depraved, all relative forms or entities are equally adjusted and adjusted according to their true state. She is a figure to both love and dread, for she adjusts according to our deepest need, which we may not consciously recognize. The veil and dragon. In the Wheel of Fortune, the double dragon was outside the fourfold cycle. It represented mysterious powers beyond our customary human intellect, emotions, and generative drives. But in Justice, we perceive the dragon anew, with a transpersonal consciousness. Now they are almost fully visible as totem beasts upon the veil that conceals the abyss in our final step into the void or unknown truth. Here's one card that I really wanted to read a little bit about because I didn't understand it from looking at the card. Judgment. Divinatory meaning may mean outwardly a matter of judgment in a situation, depending upon position in the pattern of cards. Often indicates that a judgment must be made by the querent, often with profound or far-reaching effects. Also indicates collective or ancestral matters, such as national situations and seemingly unavoidable influences, but this level of meaning must be read only in association with all other factors. Then there's about a page or so of the origin of the image, the elements of the image or contents of the image. The sea. The sea is common to many trump cards of judgment and supernal archetypal symbols. It is the sea of universal being. It takes relative form as the interactions or depths of space and time in the boundless ocean of stellar energies. These three seas are ultimately one. The two faces. In regular trumps of this image, we see a collection of people of all ages climbing out of coffins, summoned by a trumpet-blowing angel. These are the elect or elite, summoned to resurrection in paradise. In the vision of Merlin, the goddess Ariadne causes the four winds to blast and summon the dust of the ancients or ancestors to arise. All humankind, indeed all order of life, come to the last judgment. Otherwise it would only be a temporary condition within one of the lesser wheels. Our combined image of an infant and an aged man fuses the life cycle of humanity from first to last. We find this image in Merlin's vision of the apocalypse, for the presence of the goddess is preceded by that of Janus, the god of gateways, who has two faces, young and old. This deity still survives in our month January, which looks both ways at the turning of the year. Thus the infant and old man represent humanity, but also the extremes of consciousness inherent within being or divinity. The two heads appear back to back, emerging from one another within three rays of light. Let's see, the stellar world. The stellar circle arises above the sea. The veiled goddess. The veiled figure is the weaver, called Ariadne in the prophecies of Merlin. We cannot look directly upon her face, for she is the first form taken by the unknown, and we are not able to perceive such power or reality directly. The opening. The vesica, or lens-shaped opening, is a gate into the void. The goddess alone guards this gate. All paths lead to this supernal state in which existence and non-existence emerge from one another. Beyond the goddess is nothing. Thus, to pass beyond her is to merge with the void. Okay, so those are the three, let's see, the first 6 cards, the 3 worlds, and the 3 wheels. Moon, sun, and star being the 3 worlds. Fortune, justice, and judgment being the 3 wheels. Now we're going to move to the ascending trumps, which is the Fool running up through the Hermit. Well, here is the Fool. Divinatory meaning is inspiration and spiritual impulse. May also include naivete or foolish idealism in relationship to other defining cards. Often indicates moments of decision or great change and opportunity hidden within apparently difficult situations. The mysterious liberating factor that cuts across form, especially when the Hanged Man also appears in the pattern. Then there is information on how the image originated. Contents of the image, I'm going to concentrate more on that. The youth. Our central character is a youth of 3 disguises found repeatedly in ritual drama or folklore, and very specifically defined in the Vita Merlini, in which the theme was drawn from oral bardic tradition. The Fool may not be aware of his ritual role. He forgets much between changes of clothes or life cycles. He is usually portrayed as a ridiculous character, dressed ludicrously as a girl, wearing a wig, but humor enables us to understand a deeper truth behind the image. The staff and bag. The Fool carries a rough staff in many tarot images. He is a traveler. This same staff, worn smooth through long use, is carried by the hermit at the end of his long spiritual adventure. Just as Merlin is a foolish madman who asks absurd questions at the opening of the Vita, so does he become a wise man toward the close of the tale. These are the trumps of Fool and Hermit. A bag hangs from the staff. In some magical teaching traditions, it is said to contain the 4 magical implements of sword, rod, cup, and shield, by which the Fool will eventually learn to balance the elements associated with each implement. In a higher trump, the Fool becomes the magician as he learns the contents of the bag given to him by his mother and unpacks them upon the altar of controlled awareness ready for use. The dog. I'm going to move down to the dog. As we discovered in the Moon, the dog is an important totem beast. He guides the traveler to the other world, protects from attack, provides simple companionship. Conversely, the dog may appear as a wild wolf or similar creature, and in some trumps this animal tears at the Fool's clothing. In the second context, we might take the wild beast to represent the paradoxical truth that it is our untamed, savage folly that can lead us to enlightenment. The Path of Folly. Okay, and there's a lot of information about the path. I'm not going to read that. The Identity of the Fool. We have touched on the relationship between the Fool, the Hermit, the Hanged Man, and the universe. This relationship will be discussed within the chapters for each trump, but it should be clear from the foregoing that the Fool has both a human and a divine or transhuman aspect. The Cave. There are two possible interpretations of the cave, depending upon our quality of folly. If we choose not to jump but to crawl backwards down the path, the cave is the dwelling of unseen horror. It hides a monster, the ultimate expression of our fears embodied in a grotesque self-image. The monster is indeed the stuff of nightmares and irrational reactions, but we find it paraded all around us in images of the pseudo-self, promoted by advertising, politics, religion, and subtle propaganda and conditioning. I don't know if you can see. The cave is here. The Flight of Geese. The distant flight of geese. Boy, you could barely see them at the top there. The distant flight of geese has several interwoven meanings. On a very basic level, the geese represent thoughts and aspirations, winging their way into the unknown. In pagan augury, the shape, direction, and nature of flying birds was of major importance. We find this clearly stated in the Vita, where flying cranes are said to make letters in the sky. The flight of birds in the Fool may be taken to indicate his future. In European legend, deriving from pagan myth and religion, flocks of migrating geese were sometimes said to be the souls of the newly dead flying to the other world. In British folklore, the sound of geese calling in flight was said to be that of the wild hunt. Similar motifs are known worldwide. And there's a little more about it. Okay, so that is the information on the Fool. The Magician. Divinatory meaning usually indicates matters of mental energy, life force, and creative use of the mind and imagination. Often shows, according to position, those aspects of the situation which would benefit from imaginative effort. Merlin and the Magician. Then there's a little bit about Merlin, which I'm not going to read. Contents of the image. The cave. For the first time in our ascent of the tarot paths, we are inside the cave. In a superficial sense, it is the cave of the human skull holding the brain, which is our physical organ of awareness. Upon the cave wall are ancient images and inscriptions carved and painted by the earliest primal magicians in prehistory. The sea. Beyond the cave mouth, we can glimpse a sunlit sea with clouds passing overhead. This represents new dimension of awareness. In our magical terms, a new world. We pass from earth to water, lit by the fire of the sun, inspired by the flowing air of the four winds. It is through the skill of the magician that we learn methods of reaching such higher worlds and of generating elemental changes within ourselves which enable us to pass to and fro at will. The pig. Beneath the altar is a little pig, a creature of the goddess. Totem beast of the underworld. In Celtic legends, a hero, king, or magician is often linked with pigs. In the Merlin Tarot, the pig guides the magician, fusing powers of air or mind actively with those of earth or body. The magical implements. Upon the altar, supported by two serpents, which are a variant form of the primal red and white dragons, are four implements: sword, rod, cup, and shield or mirror, the symbols of operation, balance, and interaction. The magician. Beyond the altar, a smiling figure faces us, looking into the depths of the cave. He is invoking with arms upraised in a movement known to all humankind as the basic sign of magical art. The two burning lamps represent the pillars or gate through which energy passes between dimensions of the world. The magician is an image of paradox in operation, for although he looks into darkness where we are, he is invoking light. The Otherworld Islands. On the horizon you see the Blessed Isles, partly hidden by the figure of the magician. These are the paradisal islands of the Celtic Otherworld, as revealed to Merlin by Taliesin. Within these islands is the Fortunate Isle, where the priestess Morgan and her 9 sisters dwell. Morgan is given detailed attention in the Vita and is quite unlike the later corrupted image that became Morgan Le Fay or Nimue. Who is the magician? Okay, there's magician or trickster. Wish I had time to read it all, but I don't. The Chariot, divinatory meaning, higher knowledge, scientific inspiration, and research. May also mean spiritual sciences and esoteric or hermetic arts, enlivening energy within the psyche of the querent or the situation, leading to a reasoned resolution inspired by insight. Then we have the contents of the image. The Ford. We begin our ascent of tarot paths at the deep, still pool of the moon. Higher trumps, however, tend to have water that flows freely. The Ford enables us to cross a rushing river of consciousness in which many concepts, mysteries, theories, truths, and rapidly changing thoughts flow without ceasing. The Heron. The heron is one of the totem birds of the great goddess. She has many meanings. Patience, speed, silence, secrecy, solitude, all are typical qualities associated with the heron. The Chariot and Horses. Horses in tarot and related picture images from esoteric tradition represent power in motion. The ponies drawing the chariot and our trump are about to enter the river. The charioteer may rein them in or allow them to cross. The pair of ponies show polarity out of unity. When they are pulling in balanced effort, they draw the chariot forward. A similar polarity out of unity is found in the Lovers, which balances the chariot. Two lovers are blessed equally by the primal divinity Eros. The Charioteer or Goddess. Within the chariot we see a striking female figure with long flowing hair, dressed in an ornate warrior costume. She carries a long spear or staff with 3 thongs blowing aloft in the wind. The spear is a lesser form of the universal distaff, carried by the great goddess in the supernatural trump of judgment. In the chariot, her weapon may manifest as a spear if we encounter the goddess in her warlike aspect, or it may be a staff or chariot whip if she appears in her role as patroness of culture and civilization. In either form, the spear represents power under control and direction of guiding consciousness. The charioteer directs horses and chariot, and if necessary, she defends the ford, the road, and the city beyond. And there's a little bit about the landscape and city. I'm not going to read that. There's just a depth and wealth of information in this book, and I can only just give you just the little tip of the iceberg. Next we have the Guardian, which would correspond to the devil. Divinatory meaning, energies of purification, dissolution, and rebalance, may indicate restriction for positive ends, as it often shows the balance or spiritual truth of a situation according to position. Marks thresholds beyond which it is dangerous to cross, or beyond which the individual overreaches his or her abilities. Then we have the origins of the image. Who is the Guardian? The much popularized, little understood trump of the devil is a perversion or shadow inversion of the true image of the Guardian. Such shadow inversions thrive upon ignorance and superstition. They have power over us only through suppression and propaganda, rather than as forces in their own right. In short, there is a stereotypical devil only if we allow such absurdity to dominate our imagination. True evil is only too evident in our world as the result of human greed and folly. The Guardian is generally represented as the devil in tarot, with a variety of vicious, superstitious, and ridiculous images, ranging from phallic demons to enchained humans, extinguishing light and inverted pentacles, all the trash and trivia of popular occultism deriving from medieval and later propaganda. Yet this nonsense comes through deliberate manipulation of the imagery of a pagan nature god. The devil is a relatively modern device. Amen to that. Okay, then they talk about the contents of the image, the Guardian, the totem beasts. As the Guardian is the lord of the animals, all living creatures are under his guardianship. Of particular significance are the wolf and deer. savage and gentle beasts, together under one power. For the guardian is both swift and merciless, yet he protects the gentle and helps the weak to become strong. Perched upon a rock is a crow, totem bird of the dark goddess. She is the higher form or mother of the guardian, so her bird travels with him. In a more specific sense, the crow or raven represents chosen heroes blessed by the goddess. King Arthur and other sacred kings of Britain have the crow, raven, or Cho, C-H-O-U-G-H, as their emblem, and in some legends are said to live on in bird form. The raven is one of the guardian birds of the island of Britain, deriving from the god King Bran. The oak tree is the tree of kingship. It has many associations with primal gods, fertility, lightning, endurance, and power. It is the tree which traditionally is used to show regeneration after death, for one oak produces thousands of acorns. Path and tower. A narrow path leads to a distant tower. We shall encounter one aspect of this structure shortly in the blasted tower, though this is not its sole aspect. Here we have the blasted tower, or on the card itself it just says the tower. Breakdown and collapse of unhealthy, false, or unnaturally rigid conditions, destruction of illusions or delusions. May indicate material and physical breakdown or loss, depending upon position and other cards in the pattern. Sudden and often unexpected collapse or destruction within the query situation. The contents of the image, we have the mountain path, the tower. Like all trumps, may be interpreted upon 3 levels: a lunar, solar, or stellar context. On the first level, the blasted tower simply states dissolution of form by force, of matter into energy. Still upon this first level, but merging into the second, we may apply the trump to individual consciousness. The blasted tower now becomes an emblem of personality. No matter how well founded upon the roots of life, the personality may be blasted by events, changes of perception, and many other forces. The falling figures. In our context of Merlin legends, the falling couple are Vortigern and his daughter. The usurping king snatches at his lost crown even as he falls. His vain daughter, rumored to be his incestuous lover, still reaches for her mirror of self-delusion. The figures represent all men and women equally. The fall is not a fall from grace or a descent into hell, but a fall from high arrogance and overreaching imbalance. The sun and Mars. The blasted tower is located upon the simple tree of life between the sun and Mars. The lightning blast destroys in order to rebalance. The trump is paired with that of strength, which is the positive anabolic building energy of the sun, or beauty and mercy, the 6th and 4th spheres. Only those of us who fail to grasp the inner qualities and nature of life are afraid to meet higher trumps. The same lightning flash that brings ruin also brings liberation. It is, of its own inherent nature, the flash of spiritual illumination that transforms utterly and irrevocably. This card I really love. Death, or the Apple Woman. Initially means a change for the better, implies that after dissolution and death comes new life. Often indicates total change and reorientation within the query situation. Can also indicate, by position and other defining cards, possible avenues of change and new beginnings. So, let's see. The original image for death is that of taking or destroying goddess. In Celtic tradition, including our source text, the Vita Merlini, she is often described as a mysterious woman who gives magical fruit. We have called her, therefore, the Apple Woman, and will refer to the trump as death or Apple Woman equally. The Apple Woman and 2 related feminine archetypes, a goddess or sovereign of the land of Britain, and the weaver or Ariadne, are described in detail in the Vita and prophecies, but such images do not originate with our 12th century text. The primal goddess of ancient cultures was ruler of life and death, dissolution and transformation, purification and inspiration. Images of this archetype were of major importance in religion, magic, and mystical initiations. And what I like about this, it's sort of reminiscent to me of how there was this apple in the Garden of Eden, and the tree was referred to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the breaching of that by the temptation of the goddess, or in the Garden of Eden, a tail was a snake, but that sort of temptation was what led to a downfall. So I found this once I understood kind of what the image represented, it took on a great deal of significance. The goddess of death and change was eventually replaced in popular imagery by the medieval figure of a skeleton and scythe. The goddess did not disappear, but endured in many tales, songs, folk rituals, and in the loose disguise of certain saints and aspects of the Virgin. The landscape. When we look at the position of death upon the tree of life, we find that it crosses the abyss between understanding and severity. In the middle ground, we see an apple tree, before which the figure of death or the goddess stands. The tree is of great age, yet bears tiny young leaves and blossoms. It is eternally about to flower, timeless and at the exact boundary of winter and spring. The quest for these apples occupies a number of mythological themes. Sometimes a hero, inspired by Athena or Minerva, must defeat or trick a dragon to approach the tree. When he finally gains the fruit and presents it to the goddess, she ultimately returns it to its original place. The story is not one of pointless effort, for it is the action of seeking, finding, and delivering the fruit correctly that is important. The dark, mysterious woman of the trump is the archetype of all goddess of taking. She is both beautiful and terrible. She is the power of death and life and death, creatrix and destroyer of relative form. In her hand she bears the fruit of perpetual life and rebirth, and the razor sickle that cuts the thread of continuity. The small sickle carried by the lady is the origin of that long scythe wielded in later images of the Grim Reaper. The lopped heads that appear in many tarot trumps of death are the fallen fruit of the tree of life, altered into a negative grisly parallel connected to religious dogma. The classical god forms of Saturn and Kronos come from the timeless land, the golden realm of eternity. The change of sexual polarity renders a beautiful transcendent image into an ugly, suppressive one. Eventually we find that castration motif, which so delights materialist psychologists, unable to see beyond their own organ obsessions. The spider. The spider weaves her web from tree branch to roots, from above to below. This totem creature and sub-symbol, like all lesser elements in trumps, is of major importance. She reveals the web that unites all worlds. She is the creature of the goddess who weaves and unweaves. The spider is sometimes said to be the 13th sign of the zodiac, sitting at the center of her web, spun to sustain the pattern of the other 12. Very interesting. Change and death. During one lifetime, response to the power represented by death will change. The power is both universal and individual, and in expanded consciousness, greater and lesser levels work directly upon and within one another. Ultimately, they fuse as one, and all relative differences cease. Pretty cool. Pretty cool death card. I really love it. Here's another card I really love in this deck, the Hanged Man. Now, in this deck, this card has a particular significance because it's related to a story called The Prophecy of the Threefold Death. To test Merlin's power of prevision, the king and queen sit in judgment over a deliberately contrived situation in which Merlin has to predict accurately. A youth is brought before them, and Merlin predicts that he will die by falling from a high rock. The same youth is presented a second time in different clothes and with his long hair cut short. Merlin predicts that this youth will die a violent death by hanging from a tree. Finally, the same youth appears disguised as a girl. Girl or not, says Merlin, she will die by drowning in the river. Merlin is judged to be mad and inaccurate in his prevision. He is released from the court and city where the king has kept him enchained and allowed to return to his beloved wild wood. Years pass, and the youth grows into a young man. While out hunting, he pursues a stag, following his hounds in a great fever of excitement to the top of a high mountain. He falls from his horse over the edge of a precipice, only to catch his foot in a tree branch as he falls. He ends by hanging upside down, with his head immersed in the river below. Thus was the prophecy of the threefold death fulfilled, for the young man dies by falling, hanging, and drowning. So the contents of the image are a river, a salmon, high mountains in the distance, a horse and a stag, tumbled rocks, a hawthorn tree, and the man hanging from the tree, and bows and arrows. The salmon is a totem creature of all knowledge in Celtic legend. Salmon eat the nuts that fall from the sacred tree into the holy pool. In the Mabinogion, it is the salmon who guides questing heroes in their search for Mabon, the hidden child of light. Mountains, middle ground, and totem beast. This triple division of the trump shows high mountains reaching beyond the upper edge of the card. These are spiritual or stellar realms above the abyss. The hunt is an allegory of life upon its most obvious level of meaning, but of an otherworldly or spiritual quest upon its more subtle levels. As the stag is the totem beast of the horned guardian who preserves and enables the deepest secrets of transformation within and beyond nature, the hunt is the foolish quest for the secrets of life. In this context, we must remember that the hunting youth was once the fool and is shortly to become the hanged man. See, the hawthorn tree is a primal tree of life, the tree of all worlds. It is traditionally the tree of sacrifice associated with the dark goddess or crone. It offers blossoms of great purity and beauty upon hard, painful, thorny branches. Bow and arrow. Upon the rocks we see the victim's discarded bow and arrow. They represent his previous pursuits, which have been transcended by his harmony and understanding. The bow and arrow are will and intent, cut from the wood of the tree of life and aimed at the highest peak of awareness or being. So here is the hanged man. He is upside down. His facial expression is calm, peaceful, and gentle. His arms are outstretched in blessing the river. His hair mingles with the flowing waters. His left leg is crossed behind his right knee. We shall encounter a similar posture in the Emperor, where the right leg is crossed over the left knee of a seated figure upon a throne. His right foot is lightly caught, almost resting in the cleft among the tree branches. So those are the 6 aspects of the hanged man, and they go on to describe those in greater detail. The Z sign, more information on that. The elements and threefold death. The dancer. If we reverse our card, the hanged man becomes the dancer. He is perfectly poised between the elements, arranging them in a new order. Okay, so there is our beautiful hanged man. Next we have the hermit. It often indicates the querent must look within for proper answers to his or her question. Shows that understanding is found through meditation and that guidance is possible even in the darkest situation. May also indicate the close of a life cycle or period and a withdrawal of energies accordingly. The origins of the image. The wise elder of cautious habits. Prudence, great experience, and conservation of resources is a fragmentary archetype of the element of earth. In extremes, he may become the miser or aged buffoon, as revealed in Shakespeare's play Hamlet, through the character of Polonius. Extreme age, saturnine negative qualities, excessive male-oriented wisdom roles, greed, and conservatism are typical of exaggerated stereotypes fragmented from the element of earth within human personality. We might liken them to an aged king of shields within tarot, or the jealous Saturn Kronos, or giant father in mythology. The overall symbolism, I'm going to skip to the end here. The overall symbolism of the hermit refers to a transcendent or cosmic time scale, to universal experience and understanding. It is typified by simplicity, clarity, an ultimate removal from manifest existence toward mysterious enlightenment into the unknown. Within the Vita, we find that Merlin retires to a special observatory built specifically for star watching under the instruction of his sister. Oh, there's more. The Wren. Let's see, the high summit represents the peak of elevated, expanded consciousness. The solitary mountaintop is the end of the ascending path that we have climbed upon the left hand of the tree of life. The fool has now become the hermit. The wren. Even at this exalted level, a totem creature appears. The wren belongs to all sacred kings. Many rituals associated with the wren have passed into folklore from pagan ceremonies of ancient origin. The wren represents the small that is great, the fusion of microcosm and macrocosm. The divine originative spirit, as minute and insignificant as a wren, creates, traverses, and comprehends the totality of all worlds. In British folk ritual and song, the tiny wren cannot be killed by an army of men with bows and arrows. It requires a huge cauldron, the vessel of the underworld. To cook it, the spare ribs alone will feed all of the poor throughout the land. At one time, the wren was featured on the smallest British coin, the farthing. The wren also features in a legend about flight, kingship, and power. The crystal lamp. The lamp carried by the hermit sheds light into the worlds below, leading any aspirants who follow, offering a sure sign that there is an end to the journey. The light of the hermit is small but steady, half revealed, half concealed, the light of truth. Within any specific mystery, religion, or initiatory system, the lamp is the specific promise that certain teachers or masters wait, even upon the edge of the unknown, to guide onwards to our original home. The sky to the left of the image, where the hermit looks downward, is filled with the light of the crystal, appearing blue toward the outer and lower edges. This is the sky of the created worlds through which he has passed. Behind him are the stars, into which he will turn and merge. Beyond that last step is nothing, out of which everything is breathed forth. At the uttermost extreme of being, we approach the crown of the tree of life, beyond which nothing may be found. The last words of the hermit are an ancient paradoxical blessing uttered in theurgic ritual. Peace is a secret unknown. This card corresponds to the Hierophant in a traditional deck, but it's called the Innocent. The divinatory meaning is a spiritual originative power at work within any given situation or query. Indicates that a defined situation or pattern is enlivened by wisdom and truth. May be taken on a simple level as a positive indicator dependent upon position and other cards. Often symbolizes new, powerful beginnings in a life cycle or situation. Several pages talking about the card in general, the contents of the image, the circle. The lower part of the trump shows an abstract map of the universe. The cosmological pattern is the traditional circle divided into 4 quarters. The 4 powers may be summarized as light, life, love, and law. The throne. The throne is both a symbol and physical expression of the great goddess. She is the vessel, cup, or matrix of all created existence. She is comprehension or understanding of all life, all time, all space. The pure concept of a throne is not related in any way to political authority, but to upholding, supporting, encompassing, sustaining, and on a more subtle level, to meditating. It is in this last role that the throne has become a symbol of worldly power rather than a sacred expression of an inner reality. The innocent is a primal consciousness emerging from spiritual origination. Her wisdom is that of perfection before change. She knows all that there is to know, for she is all that there is to know. Her emblem of interlinked circles, worn on her breast, is a geometrical key to all worlds. It is the matrix for creation which follows. The key shows 4 powers within universal consciousness. The blessing sign given by the innocent has a different meaning and may be summarized as follows. The thumb and third finger form a circle, the sign of perfection of spirit. The upright first and second fingers represent the father and mother, the god and goddess, the polarities of power. The fourth or little finger is the child of light, the savior, redeemer, mediator. He or she has passed beyond the circle of perfection. Interesting. And the galaxy. Behind and beyond the abstract geometrical plane and its inscribed circle is the manifest universe. We see spiraling galaxies, the greatest life forms that exist, the inhabitants of the stellar world. The utterance of stars is associated with the second sphere of the tree of life or wisdom. Oh, and it says her crown is made from all the stars in the universe. Very cool. Moving on, we have Temperance. Temperance is the balancing image to the Hanged Man. While the Hanged Man represents individuality turned inside out, transformed and moved inwardly toward ultimate understanding, Temperance shows energy moving outwards. Contents of the image, the threefold division. Our card is an analogy of three worlds. Let's see. The lowest part is the manifest or sub-lunar world, including the trumps, moon, and fortune. The second, the solar or angelic world. The third, the stellar or archangelic world. Oh boy, very complex. The sea represents created worlds, formed and expressed below the abyss. The shoal of fish within the seething waters symbolizes innumerable life forms in the universe. Salamander and volcano. Here we see two symbols of energy, elemental fire and action. The distant volcano erupting represents the universal explosion or Big Bang of quantum physics. The salamander, which is a mythical creature of transformative fire, is a symbol of that same immense energy encapsulated in an individual life form. Inverted tree and path. Let's see. The tree shows once again the inversion of reality that occurs in higher worlds. Our regular mode of existence is a reversal of transcendent consciousness. The reality of spiritual beings is a reversal of our reality. The winged figure. An androgynous being stands in all three worlds, crossing the abyss, fusing the elements into harmony. In traditional mysticism, this is a great archangel, or operative entity that enacts and mediates the will of God. Images of this sort should not, of course, be confused with orthodox angels, as they are ancient archetypes of considerable power and not merely outmoded aspects of formal religion. Temperance holds two vessels or chalices. These are fundamental poles of energy, positive and negative. They merge and flow in a cycle of perfect harmony when directed by Temperance. He or she enables a perfect fusion of art and nature, positive and negative, will and energy, imagination and form. Temperance has a universal meaning and a directly solar or localized meaning as the source of all savior figures in human history. The woven robe, wrapped from a single unbroken sheet of weaving, suggests the Z sign that has appeared in various forms throughout the Merlin Tarot. The woven fabric is, of course, the entirety of creation, given shape through the interaction of time, space, and energy. We might say that while the Hanged Man represents threefold death, Temperance represents threefold life. The elements of both trumps are similar: tree, fish, mountain, and bridging or resolving figure in human form. The horse and deer have disappeared in Temperance, but the salamander is a higher form of the humble newt first encountered at the very beginning of the tarot journey, the moon. Okay, on we move to the Emperor. Illimitable creative power may simply indicate a period of opportunity of great benefit according to other cards and positions. On a higher level, it often shows opportunities for relationship between and fusion of inner and outer life and consciousness. Let's see, the threefold division. The checkered pattern of the platform in the foreground of the image symbolizes the polarity and relationship of energies in the created worlds. The throne. Upon the checkered platform is the emperor, seated upon his throne, bearing the symbols of power. The throne is a feminine symbol. The Great Mother is the throne and vessel of the universe. In medieval symbolism, a cathedral is also a throne, vessel, or ship for the power of God. Thus, the emperor crosses the abyss in a vast explosion of energy, but is upheld and supported by a feminine containing power or matrix, the throne. The emperor is seated. Figure is a mature male at the very peak of his powers. As he is a transpersonal or divine image, he remains at that peak in a state of perfect balance. He exists both in and out of our conception of serial time. All right, then there's a few other symbols here: mouse, ram, lion, and eagle. We find 3 types and levels of beast in the image. They correspond to the 3 levels or worlds into which the overall picture is divided. The mouse, holding a nut in his paw, sits right within the protective shadow of the emperor's throne. This symbolizes that the power of the emperor extends in mercy to all life forms, even the smallest and most humble. The ram and lion are both archetypical animals of rule, inception, power, and kingship. They are also the traditional astrological signs of Aries and Leo, or spring and summer, associated with strong anabolic and solar connectives. The imperial eagle soars high in the blue sky above, king of the birds. Yet we discovered at the trump of the hermit that only one bird flies higher than the eagle, and that is the smallest bird of all. The eagle is associated with powers of great strength, clear sight, nobility, and of course, rulership of the element of air. The strength card, a positive beneficial source of strength, may indicate power within a given situation or may imply material benefit according to the position and other cards. Often indicates creative or constructive possibilities within the query situation. Let's see. Ground and sky. The level ground upon which the maiden and lion stand represents the solar world, the field of action in which energies operate. It is also their ultimate expression through interaction. More simply, the ground in our trump is a higher form of the element of earth. Within this trump, the 4 elements and various cycles of life are shown. The maiden and lion are archetypes of the human and animal kingdoms. They are not, however, actual created woman and beast, but images or matrices for energy that will eventually express themselves in polarized organic forms. We might say that the maiden is the highest vessel of poise and balance in the solar world, while the lion is the highest vessel of raw natural force. When our inner power, the lion, is awakened in a balanced manner, the maiden, it becomes a powerful yet gentle friend, companion, and servant. But if awakened without the harmonizing matrix, this same inner power becomes a ravening beast. The lion represents on one level the innocent but savage beast of power. The maiden transforms this beast through her inherent grace. Yet upon a higher level we see the lion as a totem beast of the Lord of Light, in whom the totality of illumination and power is vested. Individual human energies are the lesser lion, while solar or divine energies are the greater lion. The Empress, a positive, giving state or condition, may relate to personal emotions or partners, or may symbolize a fruitful, creative, or beneficial situation. Tends to indicate situations in which nurturing or cultivation are required to realize inherent potential truly, but this varies according to the position and other cards in pattern. So we have a triple division into the foreground, middle, and sky. The Empress upon her throne. We have a profusion of plants, stream and trees, and a totem bird, the evening star in the sky above. Needless to say, my mouth is getting a little dry, so I'm going to try and make this a little bit shorter here. A beautiful woman crowned with a headdress of stars and flowers sits upon her throne, surrounded by the bounty of luxuriant nature. She is the goddess or matrix of all giving in life. All positive emotions are her children. She is the mother of every kindly, compassionate, warm feeling. She builds and generates cohesion and joy in the outer world of expression and form. Paradoxically, she is both virgin and mother, for her fruitfulness is timeless, a state of eternal spring. Let's see. The Empress wears a flowing robe, which merges with plants and flowers around her throne. It is the veil or vestment of form which surrounds energy and which may flow into different relative shapes at any moment of perception. She is an expression of the goddess Venus, who rules emotions, love, and sexual power as an independent energy not confined to breeding, which is governed by the goddess Luna. Around her waist is the girdle or zona of Venus, symbolizing sexual energy and perfect victory over this most potent of life powers that leads to interaction. The cord or girdle of Venus symbolizes that there is a unity to each and every strand woven through the energies of relationship. They are all under the blessing of the goddess. In her right hand, the Empress carries a long scepter, topped with the crystalline orb. In her, the functions of the rod and orb, or organizing power and world sphere, are fused into one implement. In our previous trump, the Emperor, these emblems were still separate, though wielded by one centralizing figure. The bird perched upon the throne is a song thrush, symbolizing the heights and expressions of feeling through its song. Next we move on to the Lovers. Representing love and relationships usually means positive, harmonious connections with other people, depending on position and pattern in other cards. May also mean a spiritual or transcendent power within the individual. Balance between male and female. Often represents inspired creativity related to a lover or idealized focus. The upper part of the image is a robed figure radiating light. The hands of this figure are extended over the human couple in a sign of blessing. No face may be seen, for this being is both the source and fusion of individuality. The face is that mystery of light which we may not look upon as humans. The couple in the image feel the presence and power of the being that blesses them, but looks outwards or perhaps toward one another. The man and woman shown are the original human couple, the ideal Adam and Eve of legend, the first man and woman described in tradition worldwide. The couple is garlanded with flowers and stands unashamedly naked. They are in a state not of ignorance, but of innocent perfection. Landscape, stream, and path. By the male is a flowing stream, by the female a path. Both lead to a distant tor or sacred mound, upon which a round tower or upright standing stone is located. Above this central locus rises the transcendent figure of blessing, filling the sky with its radiance. Let's see what else we have here. The pair of birds. In the foreground, we see a pair of courting pheasants. These birds represent final definition of polar energies into sexuality. They are before or ahead of our ideal human couple. Thus, physical mating has not yet been defined. Once the couple passes beyond the courting birds, they emerge into the lunar world, in which they join together sexually and eventually produce further humans through the process of childbirth. Okay, we just have a couple more cards to go through. This is the Priestess. Divinatory meaning is relationship between emotions and foundational or sexual energies. Often refers to mental and emotional health, matters of sexual attraction, reproduction, and creative work that employs the feelings. May also refer to insights into the inner mysteries of life, either as maturity of emotions or in the form of specific magical arts, such as meditation, visualization, prayer, or magical dance and music. The ground upon which the priestess stands is the Fortunate Isle, the Avalac or Avalon Island of Apples, or Blessed Isle of Celtic tradition. This is the eternal otherworld, not remote or distant, but as near as life, feeling, and imagination. The two trees. The trees are Rowan, the guardian tree of the Celtic otherworld associated with magical arts, fairy traditions, and many ancient legends of sanctity, and the otherworld tree of flames and crystal fruit. They are, in fact, one tree. Its natural outer expression and its energetic inner transformation are reflections or inversions of one another. The priestess. The figure is that of a young but mature woman with hair shading from gold into dark red. Hers is that otherworldly beauty that transcends yet includes sexuality. She wears a shimmering robe and a cloak made from the feathers of every wild bird in the land. This feathered cloak, traditionally found in tales or early manuscripts describing druids or magicians, is her power of instantaneous flight. It is significant that this power is related not only to our imagination, but also to creatures of the air in a specific environment. In other words, the priestess would be wearing different feathers in her cloak if she represented a different land or part of the world. She might also be of the type and color of that region, rather than bearing the magical or fairy golden red hair and coloration of Celtic archetypes. Her feathered cloak is fastened by a pin or brooch in the shape of mistletoe, reminding us of her druidic and ancient origins. Around her forearms are spiraling serpents of power, the ancient symbols of royal blood or otherworld lineage. She appears to be holding something invisible towards us. Whatever it is may be discovered in meditation or visualization. The mask. At the feet of the princess is a discarded leather mask. Masks of this sort are associated with Celtic water magic or with ancient temples such as Aqua Solis, Bath, England, where ritual masks have been found by archaeologists. Masks were employed in rituals, worn by a priest or priestess to hide the intense power of divinity which flowed through them at peak moments. Nature wears a mask, but with our inner perceptions we may gradually see reality unmasked. One of the first images to be unmasked and to present herself to us in a true form is the priestess. And last card here, we have the universe or the world. May simply mean worldly or material concerns, especially in the context of other cards. Also refers to balance of elements or energies within the individual. A direct indicator of where the greatest power may be found in any situation, according to the position of the card. The contents are the androgynous figure, both male and female. There are 3 interlinked rings or fields of power. There's a gate or vesica behind the androgyne. There is a background of clouds and 4 creatures of the elements. So the central figure may be male or female. Unlike the Fool, who seems to change roles, this archetype expresses all roles simultaneously. The gender is both male and female at the same time, but there is more than mere bisexuality in the symbolism. The androgyne combines the physical organs of erect penis, vagina, and full breasts with a face and figure that may be young female or male. We encountered a veil before the face of the goddess in the Trump judgment. Now we see its final expressed mystery, for it reveals secrets of sexuality, yet seems to hide them. The veil shows a serpentine or undulating path of energy which must be established to understand a relationship between the 4 elements, obviating the cycles of the Wheel of Fortune. The 3 rings are being, understanding, and wisdom. That's all I'm going to say on that. There's a lot more expounded upon in the text here. The 4 creatures. The background of the image is one of seething clouds and wind blown by 4 creatures who define each corner or quarter. The 4 elements, the 4 powers, the 4 winds. The 4 original powers create the worlds and are reflected upon the planet Earth through the action of 4 winds. Although the 4 creatures have a relationship to astrological signs, we find them in a very primal mode in our trump. The eagle is the creature of air, the man is the creature of water, the lion of fire, and the bull of earth. They are signs in a proto-astrology rather than in any later mathematical system of correlations. They relate to the 4 seasons, the 4 ages in a life cycle, and more subtly to the 4 powers centers defined in the trump. When we use the images in this manner, we must see the creatures as sources of power, rather than detailed intellectual correspondences. This elemental theme is our final use of totem beasts within the Merlin Tarot, for we have now come full circle in our journey through the worlds. So that is the brief amount of information I can give you. It's taken quite a bit of time. As I said, this book also contains some spreads, some brief information on the minor arcana that we've already looked at. It's a rather long video. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will talk to you next time. I'm going to go get a drink of water because my throat is dry. Take care. I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe for more.